What? Run the alls here. Go back to YouTube now.
With every trailer that dropped for Silent Hill 2 Remake, I lost more and more confidence in this game having any chance of being good. Most people were already counting Bloober Team out. They had less faith in Bloober Team than they do in Ubisoft making a good open world title. But against all the odds, like an anime protagonist, they didn't give up, and they actually delivered a good game. Much to my surprise and the surprise of many others who played it, it's actually kind of a banger. It kind of slaps. As Darman has always taught us, you can't judge a book.
Sure. I believe that. Sure, I'm sure I believe that, yeah. I'm sure I do. I'll try. I'll try and believe it. It's fun to wait for a game to load. Let's go load some videos, I guess. No, don't recommend channel.
A free-for-all PvP zone, a new raid, a gear score increase and matchmaking. Here's what's new for New World Eternum. Cutlass Keys has been upleveled and all of the POIs are now level 66 areas. Plus, there is a new area, the Cursed Mists, which is a free-for-all PvP zone. In all chests in Cutlass Keys you can now find Mystic Doubloons, which is a new currency you can trade in for various gear or material boxes at the Well of Fortune. All of the materials and the doubloons you find inside the PvP zone will have the curse status, and you will drop half of them upon death. There will be quests, events and treasure map hunts happening inside the zone. There are also some measures to prevent teaming, but we'll have to see how good they'll work. There is a new 10-man raid with 3 bosses, and the maximum gear score has been increased to 725. Now, out of all of your old gear, only the artifacts can be upgraded to 725. You will find some new named items in the new raid, the Sandworm raid, and at the Well of Fortune, and those can be upgraded to 725. In terms of crafting, you have the Gorgon items, and you have the Bizcraft, the Gorgonite items, which allow you to choose all 3 perks. Then, additionally, you can get 1 weekly chest for doing OPR or Arena, and these are all of the ways to 725 gear score. Soul Trials are now repeatable, they have been upscaled and you can do 3 of them per day. There are 8 new artifacts, and there is matchmaking in OPR and Arena. Now, the matchmaking...
This will be fun.
will try to balance out healers across the
You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, I've gotten this question more than any other question in the aftermath of the bombshell story outlining how Donald Trump has made contact with Vladimir
Bombshell
Putin
story.
at least 7 times in the aftermath of him leaving the presidency in 2021. And a lot of people are wondering, how is this not a Logan Act violation, which prohibits private citizens from being able to act on behalf of the United States of America, even though they are not actually federal.
Yeah, it's not a story. I'm sorry. What? Assholes. Fuck you guys. Why did you jump into that, you idiot? No. Nope. I should have jumped into that. That was stupid. Loser. Press W. Loser. Gonna go pee. I'll be right back. Oh, this was worthless. Return to lobby. Go.
In the world of gaming, 5 years can seem like a long time, and I am about to make it seem much, much longer. As much as the last 5 years have brought some kind of annoying stuff to PC gaming, it's also brought us plenty of gold. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on GameRanks, the top 50 PC games of the last 5 years. Starting out with number 50, it's Cyberpunk 2077. It took 3 years.
The last on the list, Cyberpunk.
But they were able to get this game to a point where I would recommend Cyberpunk to
No.
just about anybody. From the massive 2.0 update that reworked a lot of the gameplay system, made the shooting more satisfying, made the skill tree more interesting, it's just an all-around better game. It wasn't unplayable at launch, at least on PC, but it clearly needed a lot
It's
of work.
unplayable
That
now.
it has been fixed. It went from a game that was being lambasted in
Shill,
pretty much all
lambasted,
games media
lambasted.
to being a critical darling. It's a great game now, and yeah, it sucks that it had such a rough launch. Some people probably actually never will forgive the developers for putting it out in a state like that, and to be frank, it is a shameful thing to do, especially given that CD Projekt Red self-publishes games and is under no force to put a game out. They got that Witcher 3 money, folks. But aside from No Man's Sky, if there is any game out there that totally justifies the dependence on patches, it's Cyberpunk 2077. I will take an extremely flawed game that gets fixed and becomes incredibly good over a game that is bad forever every time. Night City is one of the best, most fleshed out open worlds out there, and the story is great. If you're into shooters or RPGs or CD Projekt Red's games like The Witcher 3, you'll probably like Cyberpunk. And that's a pretty wide net to cast for probably like a game. It's, in fact, probably the most obvious thing to put on this list, and that's exactly why we started off with it. Moving on to number 49, we're talking Persona 5 Royal. This is an enhanced port of the original Persona 5. It came out on PC in 2022, a few years after the regular version, but the patient gamer wins again because this is by far the best version of the game. Along with a new party member and a lot of small tweaks, improvements, and additions, the big thing Royale adds is an entirely new ending that extends the length of the game by a large amount. It's a better ending, too, just to be clear. Even if the idea of spending even more time in this already garbage gargantuan RPG sounds like a commitment. Believe me, it's worth getting. Just look up how to actually reach it online. You don't want to spend 100 hours playing this thing only to find out that you missed out on the new stuff. Even if you don't care about all that, Persona 5 Royal is a super slick JRPG with style to spare, an amazing soundtrack, a deep and engaging battle system, and let me just tell you, it is one of the most fun battle systems that exists in the Xenoblade realm. Just expect it to take some time. An average playtime to start to finish can run well over 100 hours. And number 48, it's Ghost of Tsushima directly cut. Took a while to hit PC, but man is it worth it, because it is a fantastic game. Imagine an Assassin's Creed game, but with hard-hitting, intense combat, and you got a basic idea of what to expect from Ghost. Another thing to expect is a highly immersive experience. Rather than having gigantic quest markers all over the place, a guiding wind points you towards your next objective. The game's full of like that. They innovate on the world. It is a beautiful RPG, and it's more mechanically complex than most open world games, and the story's dramatic and exciting. It's all around just a really solid and enjoyable, historically inspired adventure. At number 47 is Deep Rock Galactic. This co-op dig 'em up is one of the most fun, chaotic, and joyful multiplayer games of the past few years, and is thankfully completely free of the usual microtransaction-heavy BS PC players have grown accustomed to. You buy the game, you get everything you need, and so start mining. The idea of a first-person co-op mining game might not sound that interesting to you, but it is a lot of fun. It's hard to even describe what makes it work so well. The missions are randomly generated, but they're quick and well-paced. The desperate scramble for the exit after you mine just a little too greedily, that's always a joy, every time. And the game's fantastic community makes it extremely welcoming to newcomers. If you're into co-op games, it doesn't get a lot better than this. At number 46 is Doom Eternal. The newest Doom is one of the most divisive games over the past few years. Some love it, others do not like the drastic changes made to the Doom formula, but I gotta sit with the pro camp here. I think Doom Eternal is an awesome game. It's a genuinely hard game. The amount of ammo you get sometimes is shockingly small, but the way combat comes together in the game is something totally unique. It almost doesn't even feel like a standard FPS, more like an action game like Devil May Cry, but in first person. That sounds impossible to people who haven't played it, but if you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The combat's absolutely nuts. It's fast and frantic in a way that's tougher than you'd think for a big-budget Bethesda game. Doom Eternal was risky, and it's not a hit with everyone, but if it clicks, it really clicks. At number 45 is Ori and the Will of the Wisps, a beautiful side-scrolling platform that takes the best aspects of the first Ori game, the amazingly detailed art, the tight platforming, and adds in a satisfying combat system on top of that to make the game better than the first in pretty much every way. It's a game that's bigger, more fun to explore, and generally more fun to play, with fewer out-of-place difficulty spikes. The story might not hit as hard as the first game, but it's still a good continuation of what they had going before. As far as Metroidvanias go, it's one of the best. At number 44 is Resident Evil Village. You can't say Capcom isn't afraid to mix things up. The second Resident Evil game to be first person, you'd think they'd stick to what worked in 7 and go from there, but no, we got werewolves. Rather than grindhouse horror, it goes deep into folk horror, which makes it an entirely different beast from before, and rather than draw inspiration from the classic games, it's heavily inspired from Resident Evil 4, which, I mean, is a classic game, but not the quote-unquote classic era. It was the first of the 3D games. Well, the truly 3D games. The larger world where you explore a town and move from there, the wider variety of weapons at your disposal, the shopkeeper who sells you equipment and upgrades. Does it sound familiar? It should. It's an action-packed and exciting FPS that isn't afraid to get creepy at times or extremely goofy at others. Looking back, it's one of the weirdest games of the series, but the game design is rock solid. It looks great, it's very well paced, and it's constantly mixing things up. Just a ton of fun. At number 43 is Inscription. It's an indie darling. It seems like one thing, but it becomes completely clear that it is something entirely different. And it doesn't even stop there. It's a game with layers that the player has to uncover, and even saying what any of these layers are would be a huge spoiler. Inscription is one of those games that's better to go in completely blind. All that really matters is that it's a roguelike, at least at first, which is a pretty fun little card game on its own. It eventually becomes clear that you can get up from the table and look around, and that there are puzzles to solve, and it gets complicated from there. But if you don't care about that, you can keep playing the card game. The important thing for these kinds of mystery games is that the actual game part is actually fun, and Inscription nails that part better than most. It's endlessly surprising. It's also just a really fun and addictive game. At number 42 is the Dead Space remake. The original Dead Space is a classic of the horror genre, but getting it to work correctly on PCs these days, a little rough. So the best way to play, I would say,
I'm gonna make
the
dinner.
remake. It made a few
It'll take a minute. I'll be right back. I'm gonna get dinner. Dinner. Dinner, but milk in a glass, I think. Yeah. Or milk in a glass. Okay, sounds like Rust, which is okay. Oops, whoa, pause. This is okay, but I need you to do. Oh. Yep.
changes, like making the originally mute Isaac Clarke actually talk, and changing some of the characterization of some of the supporting characters. And some people don't like that as much, but these are ultimately really minor changes because the stuff that matters, the tense atmosphere, the intense action, it's either mostly unchanged or actually even improved a little. And in all seriousness, it's more in line with Dead Space 2. Like, these games feel less different with the changes that have been made. It's a shame this one didn't get as many updates as maybe it should have. The performance isn't quite as good as it could be, but it's a small price to pay for what's otherwise one of the best horror games in a very long time. And number 41 is Mass Effect Legendary Edition. As much as everyone was mad at the ending of Mass Effect 3, it's a landmark trilogy with a carefully realized world, endearing characters, and people love it. Being able to play them with a few modernizing touches and improvements, it's a godsend. The only downside is the lack of the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, which may have been the best thing about the third game. Honestly, I still think the third game holds up pretty well, and the gameplay is probably the best in the trilogy. Still, these games are a little dated, the writing is a little lame at times, some of the big twists aren't really that satisfying, but as a package, they are great. You can play through all of them in one shot, so all your choices carry over, or you can just play your favorite. Either way, fantastic compilation. At number 40 is Elden Ring. This one's landed, and it's probably as big of an advance in open world games as Breath of the Wild, because it does so many things differently and in a way that's enjoyable and mysterious and just feels like you actually have a reason to continue exploring. And on top of that, it's a Dark Souls game. Honestly, I don't know what else to say. You gotta play Elden Ring. It's really good. At number 39 is Sifu. This unique, hard-hitting action game combines roguelikes with beat-em-ups in a way I've never seen before, and they do it just about perfectly. It's a short game that can be completed in less than an hour, but actually doing that is nearly impossible at first. Sifu's a game about repetition. The levels stay the same, the enemy layouts stay the same, the bosses stay the same, but getting through those parts is so hard that it's going to take a lot of tries before you finally get it right and eventually overcome the final boss. It sounds like a drag, but the game is so much fun to play it doesn't really matter. And the combat is lightning fast and brutal. You're kind of like a combination of Jackie Chan, Jet Li, and Donnie Yen all wrapped into one. And once you get the hang of that, that's exhilarating. At number 38 is Hi-Fi Rush. This joyfully goofy action game isn't the longest, and the tutorial is maybe a little too long itself, but it's got an infectious energy that's just unlike anything else. The game combines combat with a rhythm game in one of the most obvious but brilliant mashups of all time. Other games have done it, but nobody else has done it as well. Once the momentum really gets going, entering a flow state in Hi-Fi Rush is like beyond fun. It's a game that has flaws, but the parts that matter are so good that they don't really matter. And number 37 is Armored Core 6. This high-speed mech combat game feels like a throwback to a different era, and that's because it is. Instead of being set in a continuous world or an open world or anything like that, it's split into bite-sized, challenging missions. Story is practically non-existent, literally just voices. The focus is on mech building and combat, and that's what makes Armored Core special. You're given tons of parts to slap together and make the ultimate mech or the ultimate piece of crap. Sink or swim with the mech design. Same with the combat. It's so fast, it's almost hard to keep track of at times. It's been so long since we've gotten a real mech game, and while Armored Core is hard as nails, it's easily the best mech game of the last 5 years. And number 36 is Resident Evil 4's remake. It seemed unnecessary until we got it. The original Resident Evil 4 is a classic, but depending on who you ask, this one's even better. You're listening to a bird that thinks that yes, it is. But no matter which side you fall on, this game is still great, and even if you played the original horror classic to death, there's a good reason to play the remake because it's actually a pretty different experience. It's remade from the ground up, the level designs are sometimes drastically different, bosses are more complex, they're sometimes in very different places. It's a remix of the original game that feels both familiar and different in exciting ways. At number 35 is Lies of P. I've had a whole lot of people talk about how we say Souls-likes too much, but do you realize how many Souls-likes there are? And there's a lot of them, but they are rarely as good as Lies of P. Heavily inspired by the likes of Bloodborne and Sekiro, Lies of P is a Victorian horror, and it leans into an emphasis on parrying. But what makes this special is that it's a more accessible game in the genre. Doesn't mean it's easy, but the early areas aren't quite as brutal, and it's not as mechanically complex. It demands a little less for the player, but in this case, it works in the game's favor. The boss designs are really fantastic. The world is really fun to explore, but not too complex. It's a good starter Souls-like, but also one of the best in the genre. I mean, how rare is those two things one thing? And number 34 is Pizza Town.
I've got to wash my hands, so I'll be right back. Very drunk. Okay, I got sent home, so let's go back out there. I think I actually need that light. I need that light, which kind of sucks, but yeah. I think tonight I'll watch Harry Potter, which should be fun. Good. Hopefully the losers leave me alone, you know? $38 hours, not bad.
So this is a manic 90s cartoon-inspired fever dream that looks amateurish, but it's intentional, and it's definitely part of its lo-fi charm. It is a super weird and wonderful platformer that has tons of mechanical depth, but it can be played by just about anyone. If you're a madman speedrunner, this is a game that you can lose hundreds of hours to, but if you, aren't that, maybe you're more casual, maybe you like games for their mechanics and definitely appreciate this type of a game, you'll endlessly talk about it, but you won't get involved in the insane time suck that is speedrunning. I'm one of those people. There's plenty to like for this game, for either group though. The goofy humor, the creative level design, and absolutely fantastic music make it a breeze to play, easily one of the best platformers in the last half decade. And number 33 is Dave the Diver, a charming, indie not indie. It looks probably like nothing special at first glance, but it's one of the most unique and fun games in a long time. During the day, you explore the sea, you fish, you look for loot, and at night, you manage a sushi restaurant. What starts out as a mostly standard but very fun premise just keeps going and getting weirder and more creative as its world continues to expand. It's one of those games you think is about to ramp up, and then they throw some new wrinkle at you, but rather than get tired, it keeps getting better. And number 32 is Alan Wake 2, a weirdo horror collage that I'm still amazed got made. Alan Wake 2 is one of those games you're not necessarily playing, you're kind of experiencing. It's split between two stories. You got two very different characters from very different backgrounds, and the game gives you pretty solid survival horror on top of really, really mind-blowing visuals. And what makes it work is how incredibly weird it is. You probably heard of the rock opera, but that's the tip of the iceberg. This game goes places, and if you're willing to take that ride, it is something to remember. At number 31 is Against the Storm. One common issue with city builders is the boring part, the part where you've solved the initial money problems and you're kind of coasting until you get tired. Against the Storm fixes the issue by making the start the entire game. This roguelike with persistent elements as a city builder, where you're always on a time limit and a time crunch. You only have so much time to get your city to a survivable state before you move on, and that turns every map into a puzzle that has to be solved. It's challenging, but brilliantly designed, and yeah, it does take a little time to get the hang of it. You'll probably fail more than a few times before you start to get it, but it's the satisfying kind of failure where you want to keep trying. You'll feel great when you get it. And number 30 is Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth. I mean, worth mentioning.
We are just mere days away from one of the most consequential elections in American history. And in any presidential race, even if it's not as consequential as this one, it is this time, this stretch, where presidential candidates have to be the most disciplined. They've refined their messages perfectly, and they're going to deliver them without mistakes until election day. Or you do whatever the heck Trump has been doing. And I want to check in on clips from a couple of rallies over the last...
You're alone. You're alone in the world, aren't you? You don't have a single friend in the world. I've got many friends, but you're alone. You can see it. You're alone. I've got many friends, but you're alone. You can see it. You're alone. Worthless piece of shit. Bye. Ruined your butt, buddy, didn't you? Of course you did. What else would you do?
And these just keep getting worse. Every rally, it seems, is his worst rally, as you're about to watch.
Harris, that we've had enough. We think you're a horrible person. We think you're a liar. And we hate...
So just, something happened with his throat there. But I'll start this over. First, click that subscribe button. I promise I'll stop bothering you so much about it once we get to 1 million subscribers. But then second, it's just total chaos breaking out. People screaming. This is mayhem.
Harris, that we've had enough. We think you're a horrible person. We think you're a liar. And we hate... Right? We think you're a liar. We think you're not a smart person, and we're tired of having stupid people run our country. And we're gonna say, Kamala, you're fired. Get the hell out of here. Get out of here. Get the hell out.
I'm gonna remind you what past Republican rallies looked and sounded like,
Drive active.
so that we don't forget how absurd the rhetoric of Trump, of course, the actions of Trump really are. But first, one more example of how Trump likes to insult people's intelligence.
I think the other one asking the question is dumber than Kamala. So that's like, she's a dummy. I watched her over the years. That is one dumb woman. Sorry. I'm sorry, women. She's a dummy.
Wait a minute. Why do you apologize to women? It's almost like it's not completely crazy to point out that for some bizarre reason, stupid, dumb, low IQ are the terms that he's attacking Kamala Harris with, instead of the gazillions of other ways that you can criticize your political opponent, when clearly Kamala Harris is not unintelligent, is intelligent given her life in the public eye for her entire career, where she's had some of those prestigious positions of authority, whether it be as a prosecutor, DA, attorney general, senator, vice president. You criticize her, go for it, but really, you're gonna be a little child on the playground and call her stupid? And the way that his brain associated sorry women with that attack, fascinating to me. One more clip before getting to the comparison to John McCain, then we'll get back to these rallies.
Go over some of those beautiful windmills. They're falling down, by the way. They're all over the place. They're all over the place. That gorgeous, beautiful Pennsylvania countryside. They got these big, ugly suckers hanging down. They're rusting and rotting. Half of them weren't spinning, and the ones that were going so slow. They were going, it's not too windy, but, you know, they're going like slow. The other ones were just dead, but they're all rusting and disgusting looking. And then, you know, the environmentalists say that it's also, very importantly, the most expensive form of energy there is. You cannot get more expensive. The wind, it sounds so wonderful. The wind is bullshit. I'll tell you, it's
90 million for
so
what?
expensive.
What a weird quote.
Epoch.
Imagine if you made a big boy bingo card for before Trump got into politics, things that would be said by presidential candidates. I don't know if you would have quote unquote the wind is bullshit on it. I don't know if that would be on your bingo card. Now, before getting back to Trump,
This is boring to me. I don't want you to recommend channel anymore. Don't recommend channel anymore. Don't recommend channel anymore. Don't recommend channel anymore, and reload.
Saga continues because Emil Pagliarulo, the lead designer and the lead writer over on Starfield, has responded to the criticisms of the expansion and the criticisms of the interview that I covered in my last video on this. Additionally, Bruce Nesmith, which was the lead designer on Skyrim and a systems designer on Starfield, has commented on the possibility of Bethesda switching to something like Unreal Engine for the Elder Scrolls 6. So there's quite a lot to talk about. But we're going to start off with Emil. I have found their response to be lacking, highly manipulative, and honestly just pointing towards trends in this industry that I keep pointing out over and over again that need to be eliminated, and we should talk about it. And hopefully this is the last time that I talk about Starfield, at least for a good long while. So I'm going to make sure that in this video, maybe it runs a bit longer than usual, but I want to get everything that I have to say about Bethesda Game Studios out there. So hi, I'm Mug. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome back. It's great to see you. You might have noticed that I haven't cut my hair, which was going to happen in 50,000 subscribers. It's been a rough week. I've had some internet problems, so actually this was all recorded in the past, and probably current me has his haircut, okay? All kidding aside, thank you for coming back. Thank you for your support. Remember to hit the like button if you enjoy the video. Helps this video reach farther. helps the channel grow, and I appreciate it greatly. So Emil, in response to this person on Twitter, Steven, starts by saying that he understands and appreciates where they're coming from. He talks about how Twitter/X has never been a place for polite discourse, but he still engages with fans, and he talks probably more than he should because he thinks a bridge with the devs is important. And I agree 100%. I've said it many times that I think that the connection, the communication that we have as customers, as gamers, with developers has been very broken in recent years, and that needs to be repaired. And hey, I think that this is admirable. It's a good thing to say, even if everything that comes after I find not good. Now, he does acknowledge right off the bat that he's doing a lot of marketing speak in that interview that we covered, which, hey, is assumed, but it's what is implied in those feelings that really bothers me. And reading between the lines, he is very hyperbolic about things because he's very proud of the team that worked on Shattered Space, and they deserve nothing less. And look, I can understand that, but I don't think that's good when you're addressing your customers from a PR perspective to come off that way, which I think most people feel you came off like you were patting yourself on the back. He still defends us by saying that optimism and excitement are standard for interviews, and that the intention there wasn't to come off as mud in the eyes of dissatisfied fans. And once again, he takes a step back and says, but he's also very proud of Shattered Space. Everybody is. Most of the quests and levels were done by designers that are very experienced and have worked on previous games and DLCs dating back to Morrowind. They're good at what they do, and it shows. I beg to differ. I beg to differ strongly as a person who has been playing Bethesda games since Morrowind. I beg to differ. And a lot of people bring up a really interesting conversation that I probably should explore more in depth sometime here on the channel of, are these games getting worse, or is it just by the very nature that you've played so many games now that you start to see how things repeat? And I just want to say that in this specific context, that argument doesn't count, because if I've been playing the games...
It does count, and I'm done with you. Don't recommend the channel. Don't recommend the channel. I don't want Hasanabe either. Recommend. Oh my god.
Hey folks, today is Friday, October 6th, 2024. As usual, my name is Jake Baldino, with no face anymore. I don't know what happened to me, but let's talk about all the gaming news this week. There is a lot. The first thing is Elder Scrolls 6. The inevitability, we know it's coming at some point, but this week or so after the release of Starfield, the expansion Shattered Space, players have been having a lot of conversation about like how Bethesda makes their games, what's going on, and a new interview has added a bit more to that conversation. Videogamer.com did an interview with a Skyrim lead designer and Starfield systems designer. They're no longer with Bethesda, but Bruce Nesmith went on record here in this interview talking about how Bethesda makes their games and whether or not it's really worth it for them to switch to Unreal 5. Explaining that it's not that simple, it's not that easy. I will link the full interview in the description down below, but essentially he describes how a game engine is a set of tools the developers use to craft their games, and how deeply ingrained Bethesda's current engine that they did update for Starfield, how deeply embedded that tool set or engine is specifically to make those types of Bethesda games, those big detailed games. The games that, like I said in the last week or so, have had a lot of conversation with Bethesda and stuff, talking about how their games have often been billed as like recklessly large and detailed, like almost to an uncontrollable amount. So he explains that like, while yes, switching the next Elder Scrolls or whatever game to Unreal Engine 5, there are a ton of benefits to it. It's not necessarily as clean cut as some people might think. He says, and I quote, "We're arguing about the game engine, let's argue about the game. The game engine is not the point. The game engine is in service to the game itself. You and I could both identify 100 lousy games that use Unreal. Is it Unreal's fault? No, it's not Unreal's fault." Speaking about the Bethesda engine, that engine has been constantly tweaked, updated, and refined to do exactly the kinds of games Bethesda makes. It's perfectly tuned to that type of game. That being said, he does speak about the concept of tech debt and essentially how far into an engine and tools these developers are for making their games, and how it can lead to complications further down the line with more stuff stacked on top of old framework. But he did say that it's going to take a lot of time for them to switch to Unreal. If theoretically they were doing that, it would take them a year or so because of training, building up the tech, all that type of stuff. So in reality, while Elder Scrolls 6 Unreal Engine 5 is the headline grabbing thing, it's really more of an interesting conversation about how games are made, how engines are used, how game engines are often misunderstood by players. But either way, I think it's worth acknowledging that players are just seemingly getting kind of tired of how Bethesda games feel. It's a good interview, but while that stuff is complicated and, like I said, more inside baseball of how games are made, if you do just want to see something cool and pretty, check out this fan project. Leo Torres on YouTube is building Skyrim stuff in Unreal Engine 5 in 4K with all the bells and whistles, and he just put out a video of Riften built in Unreal Engine 5, and it's way bigger than Riften in Skyrim, but it's very cool looking. It's absolutely gorgeous. Does this give you a glimpse of what to expect with the next Elder Scrolls? Not really. I think these things are usually very different. Fan projects never really end up looking like game projects. Still, it was just pretty fun, so if you want to check it out, I'll link it in the description down below, as well as everything else I talk about. Next up, what's the deal with Ubisoft? Of course, we've talked for weeks now about Ubisoft, the stock price down, their games underperforming, Star Wars Outlaws selling below their expectations, the fact that they also delayed their big boy, Assassin's Creed Shadows, into early next year. You know, a lot of people have been having questions about Ubisoft, what they're doing, how they're going to right the ship, get things back on track. And the newest thing that hit the headlines is the fact that they are pretty open about the possibility of them selling, or at least discussing options around that. According to Bloomberg, Tencent, who does own a significant stake in Ubisoft, as well as the Guillemot family, the people behind Ubisoft, you know, Yves Guillemot being the CEO and head, of course, they are apparently considering potential options for a buyout. There's not much more to this other than corporate analysis, but essentially what has been described as Ubisoft and Tencent doing, since Tencent does have a stake, they've been going behind the scenes and looking at their process and investigating all options as to how to fix things, and one of those options is possibly pursuing a sale. Have a company purchase and absorb Ubisoft and its intellectual property. Essentially, some sort of exit from what some would consider a sinking ship. Me personally, I think there's still opportunity because they do own so much intellectual property, so much stuff that could be made into good games. I don't know how this is going to go, and this isn't a 100% sure guarantee of Ubisoft selling, but it is something that is out there in the wind, so we figured we'd mention it. Enough that boring business stuff. In terms of cool game announcements, there's another Alien Isolation coming. Yes, this has been rumored and kind of leaked for a few years now, at least from what I remember. I remember hearing about it, but now it's officially confirmed. Al Hope, the creative director of Alien Isolation, put out a nice little message on the 10th anniversary.
My God, these people are like stuck waiting in loops, and I can't really do them anymore. I don't really want to do these people anymore. Oh man, there's like nothing good. I'm getting right to where I wanted to go to bed, though. I think I'll probably go to bed. It's been a hard couple of days, but I have an expansion coming up. And for me, all I can think about is how close that is. It's 2 days away. It's hard. I'm not complaining. I think it's going to be really amazing, but... Walking sim. It's an off day for me. I'm going to stop soon. Like, maybe 10 hours in something, I'm just going to stop because it's an off day. I know it's hard for me to focus. But I know it is. It's an off day for me. Maybe I should take tomorrow off, too. This is fucked up. Because I'm about to go hard, you know? Okay, I'm gonna play some Oblivion. I think the Elder Scrolls Oblivion, right, which is like TRST. I'm gonna play a different game entirely. No, I'm gonna stop, I think, actually. Thank you so much, guys. I'm tired and I'm drunk and I'm out of it, and it's an off day for me, and I'm just not really into it, so I'm gonna stop. Just a reminder, this is Skycat Live, and you've been watching Skycat Live. I'm a full variety streamer all day, every day. Put me on in the background, and click on the cat space to donate. I'm sorry I'm so out of it, but I've been working so fucking hard. Like I need a break here and there, and like I don't know, it's hard for me to focus because I have like something coming up here in a couple of days, and I don't really want to go all night. You know, I don't want to go all night. It's already 1 a.m. I don't want to go all night, and I'm trying to flip my schedule, so gotta go to bed. Thank you so much for your time, guys. I love you. Thank you so much. This 9-hour and 45-minute session was recorded. It will be placed on my channel where I have thousands of videos. And thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry I'm out of it, but just kind of an off day for me. Got a big expansion coming up here. Or not expansion, but you know, a big... I want you to go dock up. Oops, I forgot about this. Oops. Locations, stations, duck.
Drive.
And tomorrow I'll be more focused and more sober and sort of out of it, like sort of with it more. But I'm out of it today, and I'm just gonna stop. I'm out of it. I'll admit it. And I love you guys. Thank you so much for your time. I don't think I'm gonna post today, which is kind of weird, but I don't think I'm going to. I'm not gonna post today. It was an interesting day. Thank you so much. I love you. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow, huh? Take care. Bye.